Welcome back to the Double O Late Night Show, okay? Before we play the intro, quick, super superficial check, I'm growing out my hair now. I'm trying to get as wide as possible as of late. It can get really wide if I just, a lot of people want volume, like going up. I want it going across, This is a joke, okay? I do not really. We're gonna fix that right now because it looks kind of silly, but we're growing out the hair, The blonde highlights are coming back somehow. I don't know how that works, My hairdresser, he used to say, Owen, I think it's your face wash that you use is why the tips of your hair are like getting dyed blonde, But I changed my face stuff so many times and the blonde streaks always come back. It's so weird. And also, the blonde streaks as well, they like start at like the roots and they like go all the way up. So I don't know where they come from, but they're coming back, the natural blonde tips. They just come back with length, I swear. A lot of my friends used to think I used to dye my hair a lot because these tips were always like a lighter shade of brown, and it's just like, no, that's just how they are. I know what you're thinking, Owen. You're an actor now. What are you talking about? And it is true. I have engaged in some acting activities before in the past. Whether that be on stage, for TV, for advertisements, whatever. I have some stories that I want to share with you through like some of these gigs I've got, and I told a couple before, like the whole like one I auditioned for in Vietnam, and I got, and it was very cool. It was a very good experience. I was on everyone's TikTok feeds for the Bank of Scotland, which is fun. People kept sending me it. I got some other stories like that, and the reason I'm telling them now is because I recently went to Wings in Edinburgh, ladies and gentlemen. This restaurant's just off like the Royal Mile Street, which is a very famous street. If you know, you know. And they have very spicy chicken wings there. It's like kind of a tradition within my friend group. Well, it was a tradition to go on the last days of school, And we recently went there, ladies and gentlemen, and let me tell you, I was reminded of some of these stories from going to Wings that night. So I thought, you know what? I'm gonna make a late night show about some of these stories. Also, it's been long enough to the point where I won't get in trouble for talking about them, I think. Maybe. I was also recently doing an acting thing, so I definitely can't talk about that one, and I won't be. Okay, if the studio is watching, I'm not gonna talk about that. Okay, cool. So just kind of a setup, ladies and gentlemen. I'm part of like an agency that do like casting calls for like being an extra. Essays is what they're called, like supporting artists in like TVs and whatnot, all these things. So I get called up, I think this was like the night before, the day they were filming, because I think someone cancelled. And I was called up to be a body double of like one of the main characters, And the day they were filming was my last day of my penultimate year in high school. So like my second last year in high school's last day. Me and the boys, we had made this plan to go to chicken wings, and I had to cancel them, ladies and gentlemen. And this last day of school as well was like, it's basically like a half day where you just sit in like this big hall and some people get prizes. This was actually one of the years where I wasn't going to receive a prize. So I was like, I don't care, like, what? Why would I go, like, just watch other people get prizes? And normally there's also like a choir thing, but it was like the end of COVID, so like choir was still banned, which actually ties into a later story, but we'll get into it. So I was like, what's the point in going to my last day of school when I could go work as the body double in this TV show and get paid, ladies and gentlemen, So anyway, I pull up to the studio where they're filming. It's not a studio actually, it's just like a big like field area with a lake, That's important, trust me. And they're like, hey, you're gonna be the body double of this character. And I ladies and gentlemen, I'd not seen this TV show, so I had no idea who they were talking about. I was like, cool, send me in. And they were like, if you want to just make your way to your trailer and then we'll come get you for hair and makeup. And I was like, cool, trying to act all nonchalant, but this was the first time I ever got a trailer, so it was pretty cool. It's a pretty cool experience, not gonna lie. My name was on like a laminated A4 piece of paper on the door, and my one thought was like, who laminated this, Anyway, I'm sitting in my trailer just chilling, waiting for my call. I'm like checking all the facilities in my trailer. I'm like opening up a bunch of the cupboards, like, what's in here? I was a child, I was like 16 at the time, so I was like, yo, this is so sick. I have a bathroom and all this shit, mini fridge I'm not gonna use, but it was so sick, Anyway, enough about the trailer. I go to costume and makeup. I don't know what character I'm playing. again. So my hair, ladies and gentlemen, they put a bald cap on me. And at that point, I'm thinking, okay, I'm gonna get a wig. Nope, I am bald, ladies and gentlemen. It was so weird because it was like this like big cap, and then they started painting my head with like makeup and stuff. You know, like the hair underneath my cap just kind of disappeared. And I looked bald, you know? The makeup looked like my skin. It was so weird that they just kind of painted away my hair from under the bald cap. It's a really interesting process, you know? How like makeup can look so much like skin. But yeah, I got to see how I look bald, ladies and gentlemen. I had like a mohawk kind of thing at the back of my head. So I wasn't actually fully bald, but I felt it. Anyway, then I go, once hair and makeup's done, I go back to my trailer, ladies and gentlemen. I'm taking pictures of myself bald because I thought it was funny. I didn't send it to anyone because, you know, you're not really allowed to do that stuff. But it was for me, you know. And the costume lady comes knocking on the door. Here's your costume. And I put it all on. It was like a bunch of cloth. There was a lot of layers. And it was a very hot day. This was like at the end of June. So it was really hot, really warm. The sun was beaming, clear blue skies. It was not the best outfit to wear on that day. Anyway, I get dressed and I head out to where we're going to be filming, you know. And to this point, they've not really told me what we're doing. And the meeting spot is at the side of this lake. And I'm like, dope. Are we filming just like us on the beach, just chilling? I don't know really the shows. I don't really know the context of what's going to happen in this episode. And they were like, you see these boats? And I'm like, yes. There's like these little kayaks. It's set in the 1700s, so put your mind back then. So the boats look like they're from the 1700s, you know. And they're like, we're going to be rowing up and down this lake. Cool, cool. You know, that's not the... You know, I'm wrapped in all this cloth. You know, I'm also wearing the bald cap, so in my head, I'm going to be like, okay, I'm going to be exerting a lot of energy on this, and I'm going to be really hot and sweaty by the end of this day, you know. But luckily, ladies and gentlemen, I saw that the boats had three seats in each of them, you know. Some of them had 2, some of them had 3, mine had 3. Anyway, I get into the front of my boat because, you know, I'm like body doubling for a main character, so they would be, you know, leading that boat. Anyway, turns out my character in this show has a dog, and this dog, this husky, that gets in the seat behind me. I'm like, the fuck? What's going on here? You know, like every other boat had like 3 people like in it, or like a 2-person boat with 2 people in it. But no, I had a dog in mine, and I'm like, okay, well this dog is gonna help me row. And then this older guy gets in behind the dog, so I'm like, okay, at least this guy can row. Anyway, a speedboat comes along, and he takes the boat into the middle of the lake, okay? And we're filming like this drone shot of us all rowing across this lake. And we gotta get information and stuff for the shot. In total, this like took 3 hours to get done. We were basically spinning around in circles for the whole time as we're trying to set up like all these boats in the same position. And the guy behind me, who's meant to be helping me row, spends his whole time just petting the dog and like making sure the dog's okay, even though that's not his job, you know? Listen, I know what you're thinking though, oh, and what if the dog jumped in or whatever? This guy's probably there to make sure it doesn't do that. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a TV dog. They're very well trained, and the dog was no hassle at all on the boat. He was just chilling there, having a good time, you know, enjoying my labor. Anyway, we finally get the shot and everything. I am dripping. Like, my head is hot from the bald cap, my body is hot from all the layers and cloth. It was not a pretty sight, I don't think. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I get back to my trailer. As you know, school finished at like 12 that day. It was 2 o'clock now. And I see in the boys group chat, they're all at Wings, you know, having a great time. Well, I'm alone in my trailer, you know. And in my head, I'm like, damn. This is a metaphor for success. That's when I realized, ladies and gentlemen, true happiness and success is shared. Not gonna lie though, when I think about like acting on stage, I can see any emotion behind my eyes when I watch myself perform. It's very hard for me to like know if I'm good at acting or not. And most of the time when I was like doing plays or musicals and stuff, I was typecast somehow. Like even in school productions, I was typecast. I remember for like a musical and a play, my characters in both of these had the same job and they were like completely different productions. It was weird, you know? It was very weird. You know, I was always kind of cast as like the show guy, like the funny, like comic relief almost, but still like a respected character, I think. And I was kind of cast like that, like my whole life, ladies and gentlemen, until I unlocked a different character, you know? And I was either cast as that or, ladies and gentlemen, my personal favorite roles to play, because I was cast as this character type twice. The sad, depressed character, ladies and gentlemen. The one time I've ever felt like I've achieved something as an actor is I made one of my directors cry once for my performance. This was a play we did in school, ladies and gentlemen. And the play in question was Almost Maine. I think I've talked about Almost Maine before on this channel, but I really love that play. I love how subtly everything is all linked together. If you don't know what Almost Maine is, it's a play set in this one town where each scene is its own like duologue. They're all very loosely connected by like throwaway lines from certain characters, where one character will just like have a throwaway line mentioning another character from a different scene. You only really pick up on those details if you like read it over and over again. Anyway, this play, Almost Maine, ladies and gentlemen. Scene 6, ladies and gentlemen. Or 7. I think it was 6 though. Almost Maine. Pete. Nope, my character's not in it. Oh, it's Phil. I remember this now. I remember my partner for this scene 6, where it went. Oh man, that's so... I remember my scene partner going, Phil! So how each scene kind of works in Almost Maine is, it's fucking depressing, right, basically. Everyone's having a shit time, and then at the end of each scene there's a little glimpse of hope, you know? And that's kind of the same for every scene, basically, in it. Except scene 6, ladies and gentlemen. This is why I love our scene so much, because it's the opposite. There's like a little bit of hope at the start, and it just like goes down and breaks down, and it's just so, it's fucking sad, ladies and gentlemen. It's fucking sad. Where it went, the scene really takes you places that as an actor you don't want to go, you know? Makes you think about a lot of stuff. Makes you really think about the longevity of like romantic relationships. Anyway, I don't want to spoil the scene too much, ladies and gentlemen, but I think the saddest part about the scene is the ending. There's an opportunity for hope where a character loses something halfway through and they can't find it, and the character who loses it walks off the stage, and then my character like finds it at the end, but it's too late, you know? Anyway, the time I made my director cry, okay. This was a really fun play as well, like to do in school, because everyone had like a scene, you know? Everyone had their main character moment. The director would go around seeing everyone's scenes, you'd watch other people's scenes, and you'd talk about them and stuff. We were in like a side room, and you know, this side room was very small, it's very intimate. Me and my partner are going through the lines together. The director comes in, I think she watches the first half of the scene, and then she's like, she does some directing, you know, like she tells us, oh, go stand over there, do this. You know, pat one on the shoulder, give him a tap or whatever, I don't know. Stuff like that. Director stuff, we're directing. No, we start the scene from the top, you know. And we were meant to stop halfway, I think, but the director like didn't tell us to stop, so we just kept going. And yeah, man, I don't know what was in the room that night, but we're just going through the lines, and maybe it's because we were in such a small room. Like every exhale our characters had, you could like feel in your skin, you know? And every moment was like held to just the perfect, like me and my partner's timing on that like specific run through of the scene was just so perfect on each like beat. And what I tried to do with the character was tried my best to make him seem very pitiful, to almost like frame him as the victim, even though both like characters in the scene are just victims of their own circumstances, you know? But like how me and my partner were trying to make the scene, we're trying to like tear the audience apart by like having them be like constantly switching sides on who's the victim in this. But at the end you kind of realize like, oh shit, they're both just fucked up, you know? I know we finished the scene and stuff, and I'm like still kind of in it a bit, and I'm like holding myself like just outside of where the lights are, like because I'm like off stage in this room, and I just look over at my director, and she's like tearing up and stuff, and she's like, Owen, you just seem so sad. And I'm like, yes, come on. It was amazing, you know? I'm like, damn, maybe I'm okay at acting. And you know, the final scene of this play wasn't actually in the script, ladies and gentlemen. It was actually the story of what happened to the final production of this play. Because of COVID, ladies and gentlemen, my school decided to cancel the play, and like the whole like cancelling of the play was actually pretty reflective of how each scene kind of ran. Everyone was very sad. I was so upset. I just knew like the set we were gonna get was gonna be so beautiful, and my family were gonna love it, you know. And you know, it was gonna be amazing just to watch everyone have their moment in the cast. But like every scene in the play, ladies and gentlemen, we still got a little glimmer of hope, where we still got like a full day off school to kind of like still run it. Or did we get 2 days off? I think we only got 1 day off because we weren't actually performing it, but we still got to do it on like a little stage, and it just like in front of the other cast members. And someone, even though this wasn't allowed, you know, this was us kids being kids, okay, someone recorded like each scene, you know, so we got to take that home with us, which I got to show my family that on like the TV screen. Also, we didn't get costume either because we didn't have a budget, because we couldn't perform it, so we just had to wear our own clothes. And I tried like my best to get like, what would Phil wear, bro? I kind of put like a plaid Y2K fit together. Other cool stuff I've done. I remember I got a role in this TV show by audition playing a guitar, and they're like, okay, cool, cool, cool. And then I get to set and they hand me a bass, and they're like, play that. And I'm like, well, fuck, okay. And that was before I had a bass of my own, so I had no idea really like how to play bass. I just like pretended to like do some thumb fingers like slapping. The worst like pretend bass playing you've probably ever seen in a TV show, but if you go to the Burrow collection in Glasgow, you can see me dressed as a medieval squire with a Lanner Falcon on my arm. Pretty sick. That show was kind of fun. There's actually also a big poster in the 00 HQ of a Lanner Falcon, mainly because it's my favorite bird because of that. Yeah, it's weird that I've worked with a bunch of animals, you know. Shout out Alfie, that was the bird's name. Lived to around 15 years. Okay, Alfie is still alive, ladies and gentlemen. That's cool. Because that was like 4 years ago, so he's probably about 10 now. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. Smash like, subscribe.